everyone, we had a good question that I wanted to take a moment, and not too long, just a few minutes, to talk about. Okay, so after today's lecture, you might be wondering something like this. What's the difference between a non-argument and an argument that contains an implicit statement? So, in order to answer this, I wanted to have us recall what we talked about when we looked for what is involved in an argument. And we talked about three different conditions, really. The first one is that there need to be statements which are either true or false. The second one, which I'll come back to in just a moment, is that there's a what, meaning a conclusion, and a why, meaning a premise. And then finally, there needs to be some sort of inferential claim. So all three of those things need to be happening in order for us to actually have an argument. But if we have an enthymeme, or an argument that contains an implicit statement, whether it's an implicit premise or an implicit conclusion, then we'll see that this second condition might not be met. Okay, so when an argument is missing a premise or a conclusion, you might be tempted to say that it's not an argument at all. All right, so what I want to say first is that there will be some very clear cases of enthymemes, arguments that are missing a premise or conclusion, and non-arguments. So if you look through the textbook, there's several examples of each. All right, sections 1.1 to look at non-arguments, and section 1.6 to look at enthymemes, or arguments with missing or implicit statements. I also encourage you to read some of the footnotes that are associated with those, because the book does a good job kind of talking about this on its own. So sometimes there's going to be clear cases, but sometimes there's going to be less clear cases. And so maybe what I wanted to do is offer a bit of advice when it comes to those less clear cases. Ask yourself how much rephrasing work you would need to do in order to turn it into an argument. So if you're looking at something that you're not sure, is this a non-argument or is it an enthymeme, you might ask yourself something like this: well, how much work would I have to do in order to make that into a standard form argument? Okay, how much? Remember in class in the slides I had highlighted it in red every implicit statement. And so if you need to add so much that most of your argument is red in that sense, then that's probably a sign that you're not dealing with an argument to begin with. Okay, if you could just add one or maybe two statements in there, and the rest of it, looks like the original material that you saw, then that's probably a good sign that it was an enthymeme. Remember, we want to use the principle of charity. And so what you would ask yourself is, would the arguer agree with you? So if you were to give this argument back to the person who made the utterance to begin with, would they say, yeah, that's what I meant? Or would they be like, no, I did not mean for it to come out that way? Or would a reasonable person agree with you there? Okay, so basically there might be some cases where it's not completely clear whether it's an argument with a missing statement in it, or whether it's just not an argument at all. But if you find yourself having to reconstruct the words so much so that it starts to lose any sense of the original sort of phrasing of it, then you're not dealing with an argument at all. Remember, there needs to be some kind of inferential claim, so don't forget that part. So even if it is unstated, it needs to be something like the examples that we talked about in class, where it's like you can hear it in your head just about when you are given one of those arguments, right? One of us has to do the dishes and it's not going to be me, right? You can hear that in your head that it's going to mean, therefore it's you. And so the idea is that you need to be able to defend your choice, right? In some of those gray areas, you'll need to be able to say, look, this is an argument because of this, right? You're not asked to do that on the homework, but on the homework I was very clear that there is only one example of a non-argument. Okay, so I hope that it's not confusing in terms of turning in the homework, but this might actually be a good question on the exam. So keep this in mind for the future. Maybe some sort of short essay about, a gray area case here and then you can give maybe an interpretation where it is an enthymeme, or an interpretation where it's just not an argument at all, but you would need to defend that decision. So as long as you know what it would mean to turn it into an argument with an implicit statement in it, or justify it not being an argument at all, then you're in the clear. I'm sorry that's not black and white. The stuff we're doing right now isn't black and white, and the stuff we do later when we get to formal logic absolutely will be. So for those of you who are bothered by this lack of crisp boundaries between enthymemes and non-arguments, you'll enjoy our formal logic section. So look forward to that. Okay, thanks so much.